Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening to you, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
President Duterte extends his thanks to United States President Joe Biden via video conference for America's donation of COVID vaccines.
The Philippine Department of Health confirms that the nationwide rollout of coronavirus vaccination for children aged 12 to 17 years old will start on November 3.
And the United States bans China Telecom from operating in the country, citing significant national security concerns. President Duterte has extended his thanks to United States President Joe Biden via video conference for America's donation of COVID-19 vaccines. This as the president welcomed Biden to his first attendance in the 9th ASEAN-U.S. summit held virtually on October 26. President Duterte welcomed President Biden to his first ASEAN-U.S. summit, noting the long-standing relations between ASEAN and the U.S., a statement from the office of the president read. He said there is a need to further strengthen bilateral, regional, and international cooperation to ensure universal access to COVID-19 vaccines and medicines. Duterte also called for sustained political dialogue, economic engagement, and socio-cultural ties to further strengthen the ASEAN-U.S. strategic partnership. He also asserted the importance of ASEAN centrality, even as he acknowledged the U.S. commitment to work with ASEAN, especially on maritime security and domain awareness issues. He also said arrangements such as Australia, United Kingdom, and United States, or AUKUS, trilateral security partnership, must complement and not complicate working methods for cooperation. Late last month, Duterte said he wanted to visit the U.S. to personally thank their government for their COVID vaccine donations. Meanwhile, President Duterte also reaffirmed the importance of a peaceful and stable South China Sea and stressed that all stakeholders must exercise self-restraint to avoid untoward incidents that may further complicate the situation. He said countries must work together towards the peaceful resolution of disputes in accordance with international law, particularly the 1982 UN Convention of the Law of the Sea. President Duterte enjoined members of the ASEAN to further strengthen cooperation in digital and human resource development, including in technical and vocational education and training, to hasten regional and global recovery from the pandemic.
U.S. President Joe Biden announces his plans to provide more than $100 million in new programs and initiatives to enhance cooperation with the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. Watch this.
The United Kingdom and United States, as you know, recently announced an enhanced capability and technology sharing partnership, which is known as AUKUS. All three of us are ASEAN dialogue partners. And I want to address this up front because transparency and communication on this important initiative is important to Australia with our ASEAN friends. AUKUS adds to our network of partnerships that support regional stability and security. Australia remains deeply committed to international law and the rules-based order that has underpinned regional stability and prosperity, on which all ASEAN members depend.
The White House said U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday announced or denounced the military coup and horrific violence in Myanmar at a summit with ASEAN leaders. Myanmar's military government boycotted the ASEAN summit, which was hosted by Brunei, after its chief was banned in response to the February power grab and subsequent deadly crackdown on dissent. The United States is not a member of the 10-nation body, but sees ASEAN as an important component in its strategy to push back against an increasingly assertive Chinese diplomatic, commercial, and military presence across Asia.
We'll take a short break and we'll be right back.
This portion is brought to you by North Luzon Express Terminal.
Makabuluhang talakayan.
Sapat na po ba yun? Papasok yung 30% sa indoor, 50% sa outdoor, para to even break even?
Ilan pong mga negosyo ang nagsara po dahil dito po sa pandemya?
Malalim na komentaryo.
Ngayon, sinasabi yung essential goods and services. Pero nakita naman po natin sa Dolomite Beach.
At may time clock
yung mga bata doon.
Umaapaw sa impormasyon.
Ano ba ngayon ang allotted budget per voter?
Yung hindi daw bakunado po ng mga empleyado, hindi sila pinapasweldo. Oras!
Pero hindi rin nagpapahuli sa kakulitan.
Diba merong nag-file for the presidency, hinimok daw siya ng mga alien at ang kanyang plataforma po ay palakasin ang Wi-Fi.
At ito si Ali magde-demonstrate paano mag-swimming na may face mask.
Kaya, nood na kina Ali Soto at Pati Daza sa ASPN. Ano sa palagay nyo?
Kung kayo po ay may pinagdadaanan, daanan nyo lang. Huwag niyong tambayan.
Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 8 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga.
Oras, alas 9:26 na po ng umaga at nagbabalik po ang ASPN.
Mapapanood sa Net25 at mapapakinggan sa DZEC, Radyo Aguila at Eagle FM 95.5.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Let's go! Samut-saring mga videos ang ating nakikita. Iba't ibang eksena, lalo na sa social media. May nakakalokang video, may nakakatawang video, may nakakamanghang video. Sa finest na kaboy video, may nakakaaliw na video, may pang-asar na video, may trending at viral video. Sa finest na kaboy video. Finest na kaboy video.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
Innovation, digital disruption, globalization. Startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises, as well as large corporations, all face interesting challenges in the market today. Peek into the world of exciting opportunities and partnerships to drive growth with the latest business news and information. We are open for business.
Your weekly dose of entrepreneurial inspiration.
To update you on the latest developments in the world of business. Get up close and personal with CEOs and thought leaders. To help you discover valuable insights, sharpen your instincts for smart decision-making with the latest markets and economic trends, disruptive ideas, global innovation,
social entrepreneurship,
and other leading-edge business ideas. Join the conversations to create a more vibrant environment for entrepreneurship. Catch Open for Business, from vision to action.
Start your day right! Tara na! Simulan na ang excitement and happiness kada umaga.
I'm just trying to find reasons just to sing about what a lovely day, what a lovely day. And I'm just going by bringing best to sing about what a lovely day, what a lovely day. Sing about.
Hello, this is Jay of John's Project. Please catch me on Letters and Music on air and online this coming Saturday, October 30, 1 to 2 p.m. Only here in Metro. See ya!
Tayong mga Filipino, likas na palabati. Sanay rin tayong makipagkamay. Pero dahil na rin sa COVID pandemic, isinusulong ang pagbati na hindi na kailangan pang makipagkamay. Ang pambansang pagbati. Ito ay ang pagdampi ng kanang palad sa gitnang bahagi ng dibdib, kasabay ng bahagyang pagyukod ng ulo o paibabang tingin, at pagsambit ng mga salitang nagpapahayag ng pagbati, paggalang o pagpupugay. Pagkatapos nito ay ang pag-angat ng ulo ng nakangiti at nakatingin sa mata ng binabati. Pambansang pagbati, pagpapakita ng paggalang, kababaang loob at pagiging sensero nating mga Filipino.
Turuan din natin ang mga bata ng tamang paghugas ng mga kamay. Basain ang kamay ng tubig at lagyan ng sabon. Kuskusin ang iyong mga palad. Gayon din ang pagitan ng mga daliri. Pati na ang likod ng mga palad at daliri. Ganon din ang iyong hinlalaki, kasama ang mga dulo ng iyong mga daliri. Pagkatapos ay iyong palapulsuhan. Gawin ito ng kahit 20 segundo. Pagkatapos ay banlawan ng tubig at patuyuin.
Enjoy your favorite OPM hits as we play them on air and online. From music videos,
Yeah, we gonna go up. Ibibigay ko ang aking puso. Iyong tingin pa lang ako ay natunaw na.
to entertaining live and home performances on your favorite Pinoy artists.
Now every step we take, boundary we break. There's nothing we can do.
Pakinggan mo ang aking sigaw sa talanong buwan.
Mag-hashtag Soundtrip and Chill kasama ang barkada ng Letters and Music. Balikan ang mga natatanging performances ng inyong favorite OPM artist sa Letters and Music Rewind. 4 p.m. mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes. Mga request at new performances naman ang bibida sa Letters and Music tuwing Sabado at Linggo, 1 p.m. Lahat ng yan dito lang sa Net 25.
Welcome back to the news. Once again, U.S. President Joe Biden announces plans to provide more than $100 million in programs and initiatives to enhance cooperation with the ASEAN, or the Association of the Southeast Asian Nations. Watch this.
Thank you. Now, I'm pleased to invite President Biden to deliver his opening remarks. Excellency.
You can expect to see us showing up, as Vice President Harris did with a recent trip to the region. You can expect to see me personally showing up and reaching out to you. You can expect to see the United States deepening our long-standing cooperation, pursuing new avenues of ministerial dialogue, investing in our countries and driving inclusive prosperity in this critical region. We intend to launch a new program and initiatives to enhance our cooperation across the range of issues, totaling more than $100 million. Our bottom line is that ASEAN is essential. I want to say that is essential to the regional architecture of the Indo-Pacific. And the United States is committed to ASEAN's centrality. You know, it's a linchpin. It's a linchpin for maintaining the resilience, the prosperity, and security of our shared region, because the relationship between the United States and ASEAN is vital for the future of all 1 billion of our people. Our partnership is essential in maintaining a free and open Indo-Pacific, which has been the foundation of our shared security and prosperity for many decades. The United States strongly supports the ASEAN outlook and the Indo-Pacific, on the Indo-Pacific and the rules-based regional order. Our continued cooperation is only growing more important, not less, more important, as we strive together to meet the challenges that are going to shape the 21st century moving forward.
The White House said U.S. President Joe Biden on Tuesday denounced the military coup and horrific violence in Myanmar at a summit with ASEAN leaders. Myanmar's military government boycotted the ASEAN summit, which was hosted by Brunei, after its chief was banned in response to the February power grab and subsequent deadly crackdown on dissent. Again, the United States is not a member of the 10-nation body, but sees ASEAN as an important component in its strategy to push back against an increasingly assertive Chinese diplomatic, commercial, and military presence across Asia.
Staying in the ASEAN summit, Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison says he will address the AUKUS security pact at the ASEAN-Australian summit in his opening remarks at a virtual conference with ASEAN member states. Take a look.
The United Kingdom and United States, as you know, recently announced an enhanced capability and technology sharing partnership, which is known as AUKUS. All three of us are ASEAN dialogue partners. And I want to address this up front because transparency and communication on this important initiative is important to Australia with our ASEAN friends. AUKUS adds to our network of partnerships that support regional stability and security. Australia remains deeply committed to international law and the rules-based order that has underpinned regional stability and prosperity, on which all ASEAN members depend.
Under the alliance, christened with the acronym AUKUS, Australia will be the only country other than Britain to have access to U.S. technology to build nuclear-powered submarines, which could deploy in contested waters where Beijing is assertively exerting its claims.
Australia will lift a ban on citizens traveling overseas without permission. The government announced that Wednesday, with the country's borders set to open to skilled workers and international students by year's end. More than 18 months after Australia closed its international borders, fully vaccinated citizens will no longer have to seek an exemption to leave the country, a joint statement from the Health and Home Affairs Ministry said. It comes as the country's adult double-dose vaccination rate edged closer to an 80% target. Home Affairs Minister Karen Andrews said that while Australian citizens were currently being prioritized, more travel restrictions, including for some non-citizens, would be eased as vaccination rates increased.
Staying in Australia, unvaccinated players will not get special dispensation for the Australian Open. The top official in the state holding the Grand Slam said on Wednesday, potentially ruling out reigning men's champion Novak Djokovic. Take a look.
Unvaccinated players should not be allowed in. The Prime Minister has clarified the federal government's position today. I think Greg Hunt's also made some comments. And what I want to make very clear is that the state of Victoria will not be applying for any exemptions for unvaccinated players. All I'd say is this: I'm not going to ask people to, I'm not going to ask and actually require people sitting in the grandstand, people working at the event to be vaccinated while players aren't. So we're not going to be applying for an exemption. So therefore the issue is basically resolved.
Leaked email earlier this week suggested that players who were not inoculated against the coronavirus would be able to take part as long as they completed the 14 days quarantine. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison then said that unvaccinated players would be permitted to enter the country if they received an exemption, which the host state Victoria would need to apply for on behalf of the players. But Victoria State Premier Daniel Andrews quickly ruled that out. Now, 9-time Australian Open champion Djokovic is one of many players who have refused to share their vaccination status, casting doubt over whether he will defend his title at Melbourne Park in January. This year's Australian Open was hit hard by the pandemic, with all players going through 2 weeks of quarantine while crowds were restricted in a 5-day snap lockdown called mid-event.
Australia authorized booster shots of COVID-19 vaccines for over 18s, with the third dose expected to be offered to the entire population from next month. The Therapeutic Goods Administration Regulatory Authority said it had granted provisional approval for 1 dose of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine to be given as a booster shot to all adults. Health Minister Greg Hunt said a population-wide booster program would begin no later than November 8, subject to approval from the nation's immunization advisory body. Australia has so far double-dosed 74% of its population aged over 16, with 87% having received a single jab. Booster shots had already been made available to severely immunocompromised people earlier in October. The government said it expected Moderna would also apply to Australia's medical regulator for booster shot approval.
Back here in the country, the nationwide rollout of coronavirus vaccination for children aged 12 to 17 years old will start on November 3. That was confirmed by the Department of Health today. In a statement, Health Undersecretary Maria Rosario Bergeres said Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, the only shots granted an emergency use authorization for the age group, would be used for the rollout. She also said further details and guidelines with regard to the nationwide expansion of pediatric vaccination will be released once finalized. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority shows that there are around 12.7 million children aged 12 to 17 in 2021. Phase 3 of the pediatric vaccination is set on October 29 to include select regional hospitals outside the NCR. The DOH also urged the adult population, especially those belonging to priority groups A2, senior citizens, and A3, persons with comorbidities, to get vaccinated in order to achieve the cocoon effect, which protects the children at home against COVID-19.
The country's vaccine czar expressed confidence that the national capital region will shift to the more relaxed alert level 2 due to the continuing downtrend in the reproduction rate of COVID-19. Secretary Carlita Galvez Jr., also the chief implementer of the National Task Force Against COVID-19, said the reproduction rate is decreasing at a 0.2%, and then also the positivity rate is going down. He said that in an interview over at CNN Philippines. Galvez said the government is currently focusing its pandemic response in high-risk areas such as Negros Oriental in Central Visayas and the Zamboanga Peninsula. Undersecretary Jonathan Malaya, meanwhile, said the Department of Interior and local government and the Metro Manila mayors are ready for a possible downgrade of the region's alert level. Meanwhile, the number of areas under granular lockdown in Metro Manila has increased to 94 from the 88 reported on October 23. Let's listen in.
Dumahaba rin po, no? Dahil low risk na nga po ang buong bansa at ang Metro Manila naman ay nasa medium risk. Affected din po ito sa granular lockdown natin. Sa base po sa pinakahuling datos natin from DILG Regional Office of NCR and Regional IATF, nasa 94 areas na lang po ang lugar sa Metro Manila na nasa granular lockdown. 44 po nito ay nasa lungsod ng Maynila, 23 ay nasa Marikina, isa lang sa Navotas, 9 ang nasa Pasay, at 17 naman ang nasa Quezon City. At yung iba pong mga LGUs sa Metro Manila ay wala ng granular lockdown na currently being imposed right now.
In other pandemic news, U.S. drug maker Merck & Company on Wednesday announced a deal that could see generic versions of its COVID-19 medication for people infected with the disease widely distributed in poorer countries. The Global Medicines Patent Pool, or MPP, said it had signed a voluntary licensing agreement with Merck to facilitate affordable worldwide access for its investigational oral COVID-19 antiviral medicine, Molnupiravir. Subject to regulatory approval, the deal will help create broad access for use of Molnupiravir in 105 low and middle-income countries. The U.S. and European medicines regulators are already reviewing the drug. Antivirals like Molnupiravir work by decreasing the ability of a virus to replicate, thereby slowing down the disease.
Protecting the Beijing Winter Olympics from the coronavirus is the biggest challenge, according to organizers, as millions of people in China are under stay-at-home orders to contain small outbreaks 100 days before the Games.
这个确实疫情防控对举办冬奥会来讲呢，也是我们一个最大的挑战。应该说没有防疫的安全，就没有成功办奥。
The estimated 2,900 athletes must be fully vaccinated or face 21 days quarantine upon arrival. Some of 2008's Summer Games venues will be used during the winter spectacle, including the Bird's Nest National Stadium for the opening and closing ceremonies. But only people living in China will be allowed to buy tickets to attend the Games, which run from February 4th to the 20th. Officials in Hebei said Wednesday that the province was building mobile labs to handle up to 40,000 samples for daily COVID-19 tests during the Games. The Chinese capital will in February become the first host of a summer and winter games, and last week welcomed the Olympic flame with a low-key ceremony.
Meanwhile, a Brazilian Senate commission voted to approve a damning report that recommends criminal charges be filed against President Jair Bolsonaro, including crimes against humanity for his controversial handling of the government's coronavirus pandemic response. Let's listen.
Perdoem a cara amarrada, perdoem a falta de abraço, perdoem a falta de espaço.
Isso apenas demonstra sobejamente que esse serial killer, ele continua a fazer as mesmas coisas, né? Ele tem a mesma pulsão de morte, uma compulsão inadministrável e se complica cada vez mais. Os que aprovam, câmeras que estão aprovadas. Que Deus possa nos abençoar. Um grande abraço.
The United States banned China Telecom from operating in the country, citing significant national security concerns, further straining already tense relations between the superpowers. The Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, ordered China Telecom Americas to discontinue its services within 60 days, ending a nearly 20-year operation in the United States. The firm's ownership and control by the Chinese government raised significant national security and law enforcement risks, according to the FCC in a statement. It warned that it gives opportunities for Beijing to access, store, disrupt, and/or misroute U.S. communications, which in turn allow them to engage in espionage and other harmful activities against the United States. The announcement came hours after Chinese Vice Premier Liu He and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen held a video call with discussions on trade that Beijing described as pragmatic, candid, and constructive. It will also raise the stakes for virtual talks planned to take place later in the year between Biden and his Chinese counterpart, Xi Jinping. The FCC's decision is disappointing, China Telecom spokesman Ge Yu said in an email. Now, according to Bloomberg News, we plan to pursue all available options while continuing to serve our customers, it was also said in a statement. There was no response to an email sent to the press contact at the Chinese embassy in Washington.
Meanwhile, India's Supreme Court on Wednesday ordered an independent investigation into the alleged government use of the Pegasus software, spyware, on journalists, opposition politicians, and activists, with the Chief Justice calling the implications Orwellian. India was one of the 45 countries where tens of thousands of numbers were targeted by the spyware made by Israeli firm NSO, according to leaked documents released this year. Phones infected with Pegasus software, which is normally only sold to governments or security agencies, give the user access to the target's messages and photos and track their location. Critics say that in India, it is part of a growing assault on dissent and civil liberties under the Hindu nationalist government of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The Indian government would not deny nor confirm the use of Pegasus because of national security. It offered to set up its own committee. The Washington Post said an analysis of more than 20 Indian phones on the list showed that 10 had been targeted by Pegasus, even 7 successfully.
U.S. senators grilled representatives of TikTok, Snapchat, and YouTube about the impact of the content shown on those social media platforms over children and teenagers.
Everything that you do is to add users, especially kids, and keep them on your apps for longer. I understand from your testimony that your defense is we're not Facebook. We're different, and we're different from each other. Being different from Facebook is not a defense. That bar is in the gutter.
These platforms, you all know you have children on these platforms that are too young. to be on these platforms and you allow it to continue because it's money. It's money in the bank. It is money in your paycheck. And obviously, money trumps everything.
Social media also evolved to feature an endless feed of unvetted content, exposing individuals to a flood of viral, misleading, and harmful information. Snapchat is different. Snapchat was built as an antidote to social media.
When it comes to protecting minors, we work to create age-appropriate experiences for teens throughout their development. We have proactively built privacy and safety protections with this in mind. For example, people under 16 have their accounts set to private automatically. They can't host live streams, and they can't send direct messages on our platform.
We commit significant time and resources to removing this harmful content as quickly as possible. Between April and June of this year, we removed nearly 1.8 million videos for violations of our child safety policies, of which about 85% were removed before they had 10 views.
Video sharing app TikTok and photo network Snapchat, in their first testimony to U.S. senators, argued they are built to protect against the mental health and safety risks present on social media. YouTube has battled with a surge in COVID-19 and vaccine misinformation as the pandemic drove people online looking for information. Senator Marsha Blackburn, who was co-chairing the hearing, drew little difference among the platforms and their arguments for safety.
Frances Hagen, a former Facebook employee turned whistleblower, says that Facebook is polarizing extreme divisive content and pushing its consumers to the extremes. Hagen also warns of the dangers Instagram poses to children during her testimony in front of British lawmakers at a hearing over an online safety bill in London. Take a look.
There's a real pattern. Action ranking. I've seen lots of research that says that kind of ranking, engagement-based ranking, prioritizes polarizing, extreme, divisive content. It doesn't matter if you're on the left or on the right. It pushes you to the extremes, and it fans hate, right? Anger and hate is the easiest way to grow on Facebook. There's something called virality hacking, where you figure out all the tricks on how to optimize Facebook. And good actors, good publishers are already publishing all the content they can do. But bad actors have an incentive to play the algorithm, and they figure out all the ways to optimize Facebook. I think it is a grave danger to democracy and societies around the world to omit societal harm. To give like a core part of why I came forward was I looked at the consequences of choices Facebook was making, and I looked at things like the global south. And I believe situations like Ethiopia are just part of the opening chapters of a novel that is going to be horrific to read. Right? We have to care about societal harm, not just for the global south, but our own societies. Because like I said before, when an oil spill happens, it doesn't make it harder for us to regulate oil companies. But right now, Facebook is closing the door on us being able to act. Like, we have a slight window of time to regain people control over AI. We have to take advantage of this moment.
Is Facebook evil?
I cannot see into the hearts of men. And I think there is a real thing of good people, and Facebook is overwhelmingly full of conscientious, kind, empathetic people.
You'll have to leave.
Good people who are embedded in systems with bad incentives are led to bad actions. And there is a real pattern of people who are willing to look the other way are promoted more than people who raise alarms.
We know where that leads.
Yes. I am deeply worried that it may not be possible to make Instagram safe for a 14-year-old, and I sincerely doubt it's possible to make it safe for a 10-year-old.
So they shouldn't be on it.
I would be surprised. I would love to see a proposal from an established independent agency that had a picture of what a safe version of Instagram for a 14-year-old looks like.
But you don't think such a thing exists?
I am not aware of something that
Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg has previously rejected Hagen's claim, saying her attacks on the company were misrepresenting its work.
The 2021 emissions gap report published on Tuesday shows the world remains on track towards a dangerous temperature rise of 2.7 degrees Celsius this century, well above the 1.5 degree target outlined in the Paris Agreement. Commenting on the title of this year's report, "The Heat is On," Secretary General Antonio Guterres said there was an overall failure in national leadership so far, adding that avoiding climate catastrophe would need a 55% reduction in harmful greenhouse gases. Let's listen in.
The green economy. Less than 1 week before COP26 in Glasgow, we are still on track for climate catastrophe, even with the last announcements that were made. The 2021 emissions gap report shows that with the present nationally determined contributions and other firm commitments of countries around the world, we are indeed on track for a catastrophic global temperature rise of around 2.7 degrees Celsius. As the title of this year's report puts it, the heat is on. And as the contents of the report show, the leadership we need is off, and far off. And the report also shows that countries are squandering a massive opportunity to invest COVID-19 fiscal and recovery resources in sustainable, cost-saving, planet-saving ways. So far, the report estimates that only about 20% of recovery investments will support the green economy. As world leaders prepare for COP26, this report is so another thundering wake-up call. How many more do we need?
As the report demonstrates, the world would need 7 times more ambition to keep us on the 1.5 degree track. And this is a yawning gap that we must close in 8 years. 8 years in which we must increase ambition, make new plans, put in place new policies, implement them, and ultimately deliver the cuts. The point is that we know what we need to do, and we even know how to do it. We know the time frame in which we need to act. We know the benefits of action and the consequences of inaction. The case for climate change is essentially closed. So it's time to get it done. Through stronger commitments that use every option at our disposal, through policies and action. We need to go firm, we need to go fast, and we need to start doing it now.
Mr. Guterres also said subsidies for fossil fuels and polluting industries must end, and development banks should allocate no less than 50% of their climate support towards adaptation and resilience.
Played a part, as has
the price of petrol in Britain hit a record high. Oil prices pressed higher on world markets, with a male international contract Brent at a 3-year above level, high above $86 per barrel. Take a look.
The biggest price of petrol in Britain hit a record high of 149.94 pence per litre, the RAC Motor Organization said on Monday. The previous record at the pump, set in April 2012, was broken on Sunday as global oil prices rise dramatically. It doubled from around $40 a barrel a year ago to $85 now. The price of diesel fuel in Britain at 146.5 pence a litre is also nearing its 2012 record. Factors beyond the oil price hike have fed into the price rise at the pumps. September's switch to greener E10 petrol also played a part, as has the margin retailers are taking on every liter sold, which is now greater than it was prior to the start of the pandemic. On September 1, the bio-content of unleaded petrol increased from 5% ethanol to 10%, and as ethanol is more expensive than petrol, it added around a penny a liter to the cost to motorists. The biggest element of the price paid by British consumers is tax. Duty at 57.95 pence a litre exceeds the combined bio and petrol components, which amount to around 50%. leading to calls from the RIC and others for the government to drop VAT on petrol to tame the price. The latest gains for crude oil come after Saudi Arabia said OPEC and other major producers would be cautious in lifting output despite surging demand, warning that the pandemic still poses a threat to the outlook. Petrol prices at the pump have also broken records in France and Germany. Reporting from London, United Kingdom, I'm Patricia Rodriguez. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Pat.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. The news continues tomorrow. I'm CJ Hero.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. We'll see you back tomorrow. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live in interesting times.